The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to Conor Commentary, a hilarious take on news, politics, sports, and current events. It's time to buckle up. Here's Conor.
All right, guys, we are back, and we have special guest Gary Marino in the studio today. And as you can see, you brought the poster with you. I appreciate that. The original Kimbo Slice fight. You were one of the first fight. What's the word for it? 'Cause I say fight fixer to my dad the other day. Is that incorrect?
Well,
what's the term? Because then he thought it was someone who fixed fights.
No, I became a matchmaker.
A matchmaker,
Yeah.
That's what it's called, right?
Yep.
So it's almost like dating, except for people who weren't going to fight each other.
Yeah, matchmaker. I put the fights together for the show. I was hired by shows to put fights together.
That was like before the UFC was even the UFC, right?
No, actually, I started out as a fan with the UFC.
Yep.
And then I was working corner. I was doing corner work with a friend of mine who was managing fighters.
Okay.
And one day, a couple of guys came in, wanted to be managers. He says, "Oh, I don't want to take on anymore. Why don't you do it?" So I started managing guys, and then it became managing. Then I got hired by a show to matchmake and all kinds of.
The whole
one thing
thing
led to the next.
It transpired from there.
Yep.
All right, we'll get into all of that. I just got to do the comments of the week here because we started a new thing to see people commenting. We got a ton of comments last week, Ed.
Did we?
I looked at it. It was 25.
Wow.
So thank you to everyone who commented in. I got you guys all here. And it's week 22, by the way. I like to go back and count just so we can see. I was just telling Mr. Jonathan downstairs that we're 4 weeks away from having done this for half of a year. So 4 weeks from now, it'll be 6-month anniversary.
22 plus.
26 times 26 is 52.
Wow.
So we got to do something. I'm going to do something special for that episode. Ed and I will figure it
Bring
out, right?
cake.
I'll bring a cake. Yeah, we'll have cake. Is that what you want?
I love cake.
You love cake?
Oh, yeah.
All right, Mom, if you're watching, can you make a cake for us?
Yeah. I mean, we probably don't need a whole cake between us. Maybe
Well, I mean,
cupcakes.
you and I will be here. We'll have a guest. Gary will probably be here, right?
Sure.
Gary will
I'm
be-
always here.
Gary's always here.
All right, order the full cake.
Dave might be here, you know?
Yeah, we've been known to put a cake away.
Yeah, we can put a cake away.
All right.
An anniversary cake. So last week, I had a bunch of people comment in. We had Nick Scott, Tim McDonald, Ross O'Connor, the ever-present Pat O'Leary.
Oh,
Thank you,
Pat
Pat.
O'Leary's one of our favorites.
He's one of the top commenters. He's always got something funny to say. Steve Maroon, he said I look like a snack, which in this day and age actually means that you're attractive.
Really?
It does, yeah. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
No, yeah.
I did not know that.
It's like a rap term in a few songs. If you look like a snack, that means it's a good thing.
Steve finds you attractive is what we learned.
I think so. Thank you, Steve, if you're watching. I think that's a high compliment.
Take the compliments wherever you can get them.
Exactly. Because then we had the comment of the week. Paulie Kozlowski, he said, "Oh my God, Conor is talking to a girl." I love it. So that one took the cake right there. Thank you, Paulie. That was a fact. So like,
it didn't take the cake. We're eating next week.
we're gonna eat the cake in a couple weeks. Yeah, no, that didn't
Oh, a
replace
couple
it.
weeks. All right, I gotta wait.
And then we have my mom's picks, but there's no picks left to make. There's one game left, and that's it for the NFL. And my mom was taking the 49ers.
She had them
what do you think?
anyway.
You thought the 49ers.
I've been calling it for weeks.
You called the 49ers.
Storyline.
Yeah, weeks ago with Jimmy G coming in and winning.
It's going to happen.
And I know Ed's comment was, "You don't give a flying fuck," right?
Correct.
So you do not care one way or the other?
I'd love to see Andy Reid lose again. He's such a perpetual loser.
Pretty much, yeah. He really is.
I would like his streak to continue.
I kind of feel bad for him. Like, he must be due, right? Because he's been like going to the playoffs every year and then they just lose. So I kind of feel bad for him.
So you want him to win?
No, I kind of want the
don't feel
49ers
that
to win.
bad.
I don't feel that bad. I mean, it might be their time. We'll see. But I like the 49ers. I like Kyle Shanahan. I like all that. So that's the end of my mom's picks. Actually, 2 weeks because there's a bye this week. So there'll be media day, and then the 49ers is the pick from there. You got the 49ers as well, right?
Yeah.
So the cake can also be to celebrate somebody's Super Bowl victory.
Well, the cake's going to be 4 weeks from now, though.
Oh, 4 weeks?
Yeah, because we're at the 22nd episode, and the 26th episode is 6 months. That's half a year.
Damn.
I take pride in it, though. We haven't missed a week ever, Ed.
No, that's all
22
great.
weeks
I'm
straight.
thinking about the cake.
Yeah, no one cares about that.
He only cares about the cake.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to keep you going for another month here at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we can get to the cake.
Yeah, do you guys have a preference? You want chocolate with white frosting, vanilla, double vanilla, super chocolate?
Ooh.
You don't care.
I'm not fussy at all.
Yeah.
I can eat any kind of cake.
You can.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
I love me a cake.
That's good. I want to make sure you're happy, though, Ed, because we said before the show can't go on without you. So
you know why I need cake? I had to make my daughter a birthday cake.
Did you?
She's away at college, so my wife brought it. So I made a cake, and I didn't get any.
Wow. You made it. She brought it. They ate it.
Yeah, I had nothing.
You did all the work.
Exactly.
You're on the short end of the stick there, brother.
So I need a cake.
Yeah, you need a cake. We'll get you one.
All right, sounds good.
All right, let's get into it. So how'd you find Kimbo?
Well, I started like a lot of people. I saw him on the underground on the computer.
Right. YouTube, right?
On YouTube, yeah.
And YouTube wasn't even that big back then. What was this? This was 07, right?
This probably I started
Maybe
watching him probably around 04 or 05.
Oh, really?
And a bunch of us would watch him on YouTube all the time and watch the fights. And then what really got him well known everywhere more than what he already was when he fought Sean Gannon, the cop.
The cop in Boston,
in
right?
Boston. He fought him in the warehouse in Rhode Island.
I remember watching that, yeah.
My friends were there, and that's when he took off and everybody went crazy.
Right.
It was on the front page of the Boston Globe, the Herald.
That was kind of like an unsanctioned UFC fight, basically, right?
It was unsanctioned, and what a mess that was. If
it
you go back
like a mess, yeah.
When you go back and watch it, they were all fighting with each other because the rules they weren't following the rules.
Right.
And Sean Gannon actually ended up getting him in a guillotine choke and basically almost choked him out unconscious towards the end, which totally gassed Kimbo. And otherwise, Kimbo would have probably ended up knocking him out. I mean, Sean Gannon looked like somebody beat him with a ball-peen hammer.
Right, because Kimbo's claim to fame was he just get in there and throw haymakers, right?
Oh, my gosh. He was, The one that really made him famous, too, was the one where he fought the guy in the backyard and they,
I remember that one, yeah.
And he yelled out, somebody yelled out, "Watch out for the metal thing." It was a satellite dish.
Yeah.
And at the end, his eye was literally out. The guy that he fought, his eye came out.
Right. People love that stuff. So that's kind of what led it into being into the UFC, right?
It was crazy. The bare knuckle stuff.
Just the bare knuckle boxing. When you did get him, were you nervous that he wasn't going to know how to do the UFC rules because he just street fought all this?
No, because he was what I was promoting him as the Tank Abbott of today.
Right.
Kimbo was the Tank Abbott today, like Tank Abbott was 10 years before that.
Right.
The bare knuckle, just a street fighter. And that's what he, because in the beginning of the UFC, it was, street, boxer versus wrestler versus jiu-jitsu guy versus, everybody had their disciplines. Right. So this had already been 10 years have gone by, maybe actually 13, 14 years before Kimbo came along. And I was old school. I was, when I was a matchmaker for the show, I was booking fights and going back old school. Boxer versus the former heavyweight champ of the world to fight a bare knuckle street fighter. It couldn't get any better than that.
Right. It was somebody who was like a grappler who you'd want to just throw him in there with a street fight boxer who just threw haymakers.
To throw him in there with a wrestler or a jiu-jitsu guy would have been stupid.
Right.
I mean, he had to go in there with when you're a matchmaker, you book you put fights together that make sense.
Right.
And that fight made sense because I had always wanted Kimbo to put Kimbo in a show, and then one night we were doing, I think it was Cage Fury 3 or 4, and Felix Martinez, who was the owner of the show, he come up to me and he says, "Jesus, Ray Mercer." I said, "Yeah, I saw Ray Mercer. Ray Mercer was at one of the shows." He goes, "Yeah, he keeps hounding me. He wants a fight." And I'm like, "Oh my God!" And right there, it hit me.
Yeah, Ray
Mercer and Kimbo. I called up Kimbo's manager, and they loved it. And right from there, the rest was history from there.
Kimbo took off quick, though. I don't know if I'm making this up. Wasn't he originally, way back in the day, homeless? Or am I making that up? Or he was, very poor, I thought?
I think he came from that background.
Right.
Yeah, I think he came from that background. But I'm not sure about homeless. Possible. I don't remember that.
And then he ended up climbing all the way up. And then this was like his coming out party.
This was his first fight out of from being in the backyards and fighting bare knuckle,
right, to
coming in and actually fighting an MMA fight,
right.
And so this was his very first one. Although you don't see many people talk about it. Whenever they do stories about Kimbo, it's always linked to the UFC somehow.
Yeah,
and then and this was actually the show that me and Felix started. This one here, Cage Fury. This was his first MMA fight,
and he never even actually fought in the UFC, did he?
He did after.
He did?
Yeah, after he fought in Cage Fury.
Yep.
And then Elite XC ended up taking him because when our show went out of business, Elite XC ended up taking it over, and they actually took the fights that I had booked. I had like 3-4 fights booked for him,
right?
And they took every one of them and did it the same way.
Really?
Yeah, at Tank Abbott and then James Thompson, and they took exactly the fights that I had all lined up for him, and he won them all.
Really?
Yeah.
And then was that the one in the UFC where he ended up getting knocked out at the very end?
They ended up the UFC ended up putting him in the Ultimate Fighter.
Okay.
They said if you come in, they wanted him to come in and do the Ultimate Fighter first to see if he was good enough to go into the actual show.
Right.
But little does everybody know that they were trying to sign Kimbo before all that.
Right.
And they didn't get him because I got him.
He was such a household name at that point, right? He started to get really big just because he was Kimbo Slice.
He took off fast.
So was it a
really
huge purse to get him in there?
It was a huge purse. I said, now back in the day, now I had fighters in the UFC also.
Right.
I had probably 10, 15 guys in the UFC. And I don't know what they offered Kimbo to fight, but it couldn't have been nowhere near what we gave him.
Right.
It was nowhere near that. And when I asked Felix, I says, when I said, listen, I want to get Kimbo, how much do I have to get him?
Right.
And he basically told me $7,500 almost.
Oh, Jesus.
I was like, oh my gosh.
He's coming, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the UFC probably offered him $5,000.
Right.
$10,000. Entry level was $3,000 at the time for the
really?
UFC. Entry level. So they might have offered him $5,000, $10,000, even if they would have offered him more than that. I don't know what the actual numbers were, but.
So, I mean, the money has taken off in the UFC then.
Oh, now it has, yeah. And he was probably, the money he made once he got into the UFC, and boy, they milked him for all he was worth, too, because when they had him in the Ultimate Fighter,
right.
I think he lost his very first fight. But every week on the commercials of the Ultimate Fighter, they'd say, guess who's coming back? They used him in every episode the whole way. Even when he lost, they still brought him into the UFC. But what they wanted was Kimbo and Sean Gannon to fight in the UFC. They ended up getting Sean Gannon, but they didn't get Kimbo.
So Sean Gannon actually went to the UFC, the Boston Cop?
He did.
Really?
He went to the UFC.
I remember that original fight and them fighting in the warehouse and that being on YouTube and then him going from there. And then I kind of forgot about Sean Gannon.
Yeah, I can't remember the guy's name. It was one of Mark Coleman's guys that he ended up fighting. They put him in there with a wrestler. He was a good jiu-jitsu guy.
Who, Sean Gannon?
Sean Gannon was very good in jiu-jitsu,
okay.
yeah. He did a lot of NAGA tournaments, North American Grappling Association tournaments. He did a lot of those. So he was a good jiu-jitsu guy. But the one thing he was known for was he could take a beating.
Right.
If you look at that fight where he fought Kimbo, the end of that fight, I mean, he looked like the Elephant Man at the end of that
right. And that's what Kimbo was known for, is just giving people beatings. Could he do jiu-jitsu? I mean, they must have started training him as he went along.
He learned after.
Right.
And that's how he actually beat Ray Mercer, was with a choke.
Right.
And I said to myself, everybody was asking me how I thought that fight would go, and I said, well, obviously, if he stands with Ray Mercer's going to knock him out.
Right.
I mean, it's just the way it is. But he ended up, for a few seconds there, he ended up exchanging punches with Ray Mercer. But Ray Mercer was so, shell-shocked from what was happening, and he didn't know whether he was going for his legs,
right.
And he was like, by the time Ray Mercer just started to get set up to throw a couple punches, Kimbo took him down and choked him out. Right,
and that's the original thing, because it started way back before UFC even existed. It was just boxing. But you were at the very first UFC, right?
I saw the very first one, and by the time I figured out who do I talk to, how do I get to one of these, I made it to UFC 7.
Okay.
Which was Buffalo, New York. That's the one.
That was 239 ago?
Yeah.
Because they just fought 246, right?
Yeah, that was probably 95.
Yeah, so wow.
95, 96. Yeah, probably 95.
So it was still an underground thing.
Yeah, it wasn't even, I forget when they took it off pay-per-view, but they didn't even allow it on pay-per-view after a while.
Why? Because it was too violent or whatever?
Yeah, they were calling it human cockfighting. And
right.
Yeah, they said it was too violent and everything, and
Now look at it.
Yeah.
At that time, did you know that it was going to have this type of trajectory?
Oh, it's funny. I used to say, if somebody it's going to take somebody with a lot of money to get that thing to take off.
Right.
And it's exactly what happened with the Fertittas. They dumped in, almost $50 million before that thing started making a profit.
Right.
So who the hell would have went that far?
Right.
So,
Money.
Gary, UFC 7, Friday, September 8th, 1995.
Wow.
Yep, Buffalo,
right on
New
the
York.
money. Was
Yep.
it in Buffalo, New York?
Yes, it was.
Buffalo, New York. And the winner of that was Marco Huasi beat Paul Varlins.
Wow, you remember it all, huh?
Oh, God, I was there. I got pictures from all them fights. Back when Ken Shamrock, he fought Oleg Taktarov in a super fight in that show. And then I was at almost every one of them after that for years and years and years.
Right, because nobody even remembers this. Everyone knows the UFC now, and it's all the big names. It's all Conor McGregor, whoever, this guy, that guy, the Diaz brothers, all that. But they don't remember where it originated from. And back in the very beginning, it was Helio Gracie, right? Because I know now
Helio Gracie was
he was the original before Renzo
father.
Gracie, right?
Yeah, the father, and then his son. His son is funny. His son, before the UFC was even around, well, he's the one who created the UFC.
Right.
He had he posted an ad in Playboy offering $100,000 to anybody to come to his gym and beat him in a fight.
Really?
And the $100,000 was always there, and nobody ever beat him.
No one ever beat him.
Nobody ever beat him.
And he was just straight up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that's it.
So
and
what,
then
people like brawlers, like boxers, kickboxers?
anybody could come
brawlers
to the
would come?
gym. Wrestler, boxer, anybody could come to the gym and fight him at any time.
Yep.
And that's it. But the crowds were getting so big
Right.
at his gym. That's why he created the Ultimate Fighting Championship.
Oh, so they had to start selling tickets because it was such a big crowd.
That's what gave him the idea.
Right. So what was it back then? No one knew what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was, and they just couldn't beat it?
It was unknown.
Right.
And before that, in Brazil, they always had fights like that in Brazil.
Right.
And but it was, the internet wasn't even around too much.
Yeah, we're talking way back when.
You're talking in the early 90s.
Yeah. You had an email address. That was it.
Yeah, and that stuff was going on in Brazil for years.
Really?
Oh, yeah, years.
So America was actually way behind on it then.
Yeah.
And then when it did eventually come here, I know there were a bunch of laws that it was like, oh, it's illegal here, it's illegal there, you can't do it. Like you were saying, it was human cockfighting.
Yeah, they ended up having to change the rules. And, in the beginning, the only two rules were no eye gouging and no fish hooking. You couldn't stick your hand in somebody's mouth and rip their mouth.
Right.
Or an eye gouge. But you could hit a guy in the groin. I
was just going to ask you that. So you could hit someone right in the nuts.
If you watch the fight between Keith Hackney and Joe Son.
Yep.
Joe Son and Keith Hackney is one of the most brutal. Hackney was sitting there, and he's just one after the other, full punch right into the nuts.
Really?
Oh, it must have did 5 or 6 of them.
Oh man,
7 of them maybe, right square into the groin.
Oh man,
brutal.
How do you come back from that?
Oh, it was brutal. It was nasty.
Yeah. Oh man,
it was nasty.
So then from there it just progressed, huh?
Yeah, it just started getting bigger and bigger, and then and then the UFC. Then I think it was 2000. It was probably 2000, 2001 when Dana and the Fertittas took over the UFC.
Right.
And
Dana didn't have any money back then, though, right?
Oh, he was a boxer size coach.
Right, in Boston, right?
He was a boxer. He worked at the Boston Harbor Hotel. He was a doorman.
I read that recently. He was a doorman there, and he was a boxer size coach. And was he the one, or was it Joe Rogan that was going to get extorted by Whitey Bulger, and he left to Vegas?
Dana White.
It was Dana White.
Yeah, and he left for Vegas the next day.
Right.
That's the story.
That's the story, is that the guy who killed a bunch of people for Whitey Bulger came and was like...
asked him for some money because his boxer size class was getting big, and he just left. That's what he says.
He was extorting everyone, then he left.
Yeah.
And he got in with the Fertitta brothers, and they were the ones with all the money?
Now, when he was a kid, he went to school with the Fertittas, with Lorenzo Fertitta. So when he went to Vegas, he hooked back up with the Fertitta. I guess they went to a wedding, and he hooked up with him, and he was telling the Fertitta about the UFC. He says, hey, we should buy this thing. Let's do it. And that's what they ended up doing. They ended up buying it. And that's when it took off.
So those brothers were the ones that originally had all the money.
Oh yeah, they were billionaires. I mean,
really?
They owned Station Casinos in Las Vegas.
Oh yeah,
they were already billionaires, and they took that show. Until that show made a profit, which was when they created The Ultimate Fighter.
Yep.
It lost $48 million.
Really?
So picture somebody taking out, or say we would have got a $40 million loan to start a business.
Right.
Imagine losing all of that up until who would lose close to $50 million before anything turns a profit?
That never happens.
It was a hobby for them.
Right.
They wanted it. They loved it. They just wanted to go to them. But to hang in there that long And then one day Lorenzo said, "Hey, how much you think we can get for this thing?" And Dana went to go sell it.
Right.
And I guess he had it sold for like $3 or $4 million. And then the next day Lorenzo said, "No, we're going to do something else." And Lorenzo put up another $10 million to start the Ultimate Fighter, the reality show.
Yeah.
And that's when it took off.
Well, didn't they sell it and then buy it back?
No, I don't think so. No, they were gonna sell it.
Yep.
And then he changed his mind. Did the Ultimate Fighter reality show.
Right.
Paid for the whole thing out of pocket to do that show, and that's when obviously the fight that happened between Forrest Griffin and
Forrest Griffin was one of the original people that started getting really popular.
It was that fight. It was that final fight of season 1, which made the UFC what it is today. It took off.
Right. And now they're still going. Are you still involved in it?
No, I was up until probably 2006 or 7 or so.
Okay.
8, something like that. But I ended up getting a lot of guys in the UFC. I managed me and a friend of mine, Ryan Ciatoli. He would train the fighters.
Yep.
I was the manager. We both were partners together. We got a lot of guys in the UFC.
Right.
Actually, we got the one guy that we got in there that's probably the best in the world is Jon Jones.
Right.
We also found Jon Jones.
You were the original founder of him, right?
We were the original managers of Jon Jones.
So how did you guys find him?
Well, Ryan knew him from New York.
Okay.
He lived in Cortland, New York. And he was a good wrestler from college, Jon Jones.
Okay.
And Ryan actually talked him into fighting MMA. And he was training. Then he called me and said, "Oh, I got this guy. He's unbelievable." And he was so good. We knew how good he was right away.
Oh, you did? I was going to ask you that. So you saw him and you were like, this kid's going to be serious.
We knew right away how good he was. We actually booked his first 5-6 fights all within like 3 months or 4 months of each other.
Oh, really?
Because we knew once they started to find out about him, nobody'd want to fight him.
Right.
So we got like 5-6 fights under our belt right away before they started.
And he was down to fight that often?
Yeah, he fought every other week.
Really?
Oh yeah, he won those
insane.
first 5-6 fights, and then I kept calling Joe Silva in the UFC. I said, "You got to see this kid."
Right.
And then finally, something happened where they needed a guy, and they called me. I got him in there, and the rest is history. Now me and Ryan managed him up until, including the Vladimir Matyushenko fight.
Okay.
And one fight after that, he fought a guy and then fought for the world championship.
Right.
We were one fight away from the world championship.
Really? And what happened? He dumped you guys after all that?
He ended up, just going with somebody else.
What do you think?
Yeah.
You don't know?
Yeah, we can't. That's one of them things we can't.
Can't discuss it.
Yeah, we can't. Yeah, part of the whole thing. I guess we can't talk about it too much. But,
yeah.
But he ended up. He definitely. Let's just say this. He outgrew us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
We were all growing with him as managers.
Right.
And as everything. And he was, obviously taking off, getting so big. And he just outgrew us. And his 2 brothers were in the NFL.
Right, yeah,
Arthur
absolutely.
and Chandler.
Chandler played for the Patriots.
So one of them guys, they ended up hooking him up with somebody real big that could handle taking him the rest of the way. And that's what they did.
Because he turned massive.
Yeah.
Because now he's
still there.
He's still there, yeah.
Undefeated all these years. And we had him.
But every now and then he has to take some time off.
Yeah,
yeah.
And it's funny. I'll never forget. I'll never forget having the discussions with the UFC. Like, also, this kid's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to put a lot of those fires out too back in the day.
So you knew that even coming up back in the day that was.
I knew we were in trouble right away with him from the beginning. I saw some things and I was like, oh boy,
this isn't going to be.
We're going to
good,
be in. This isn't going to be good. I knew he was great.
Right.
But I also knew there was going to be a price to pay along the line.
Yeah. Well, sometimes people who are great come with some baggage.
Oh, my gosh.
Most of the people who are great come with some baggage.
Yeah, he was very, very smart for his age.
Right.
And I remember seeing that, saying like, oh, this kid's...
How old was he when you first met him?
God, I don't know if Ed can look it up real quick. Jon Jones' first MMA fight.
Ed can look up anything.
I think it was. It's got to be. It's back there.
Yeah,
it's back there. He's been fighting. He's got to be fighting over 10 years, 13 years now at least.
Jones made his UFC debut against Andre.
Let's see.
Gusmao.
Oh, well, this will be different.
UFC 87 on August 9th, 2008.
2008.
12 years ago.
So before that, though, you're saying he was fighting even before that.
He was fighting in shows.
That was 12 years ago.
Yeah, he was fighting in shows in Atlantic City. Battle Cage Extreme. He even fought in Massachusetts at a buddy of mine's show. I don't know. I forget the name of it.
Was it Cage Titans? I know Cage Titans, and then I know out of New Hampshire now they have what's the one? I think you've worked with them before.
I worked with him in Salem here.
Yeah. Combat Zone.
Combat Zone.
Combat Zone.
He might have fought in Combat Zone. I actually helped those guys get started too. Those Combat Zone shows.
Did you? Yeah.
He was 23 for that.
Wow.
First fight.
Yeah. So before we got him when he was probably like 20, 21.
Right, just getting started. So he was you just saw him as a wrestler in college. You knew this kid's going to be a stud.
Imagine that. We had the best. I mean, going down right now is probably the best fighter in the world.
Right.
And we had him. It was like unbelievable.
Yeah, you must look back and be like, oh my god.
Oh yeah, because we were all like starting out too.
Right.
You know, we were managers, and we're like, it was hard to grow with him.
Right.
Without having the backing behind you.
Yeah.
And it was, obviously other people come in and give him everything he wants. And,
right. Well, this was before everything even took off. So you were getting started. You were matching the fights out here in Atlantic City. And was Atlantic City like the spot to go back then?
Yeah.
Because it was one of the only places where it was legal?
Yeah. We did Atlantic City, Massachusetts, Atlantic City. All of our shows were in Atlantic City.
Right.
The Cage Fury. Me and Felix Martinez, who was a friend of a fighter that I was managing, he actually, the fighter that I was managing, his name was Carlos Nieves, he set up a meeting between me and Felix, and that's when Felix hired me and asked me if he wants to start a show, and we started Cage Fury, and we did 1 through 5,
Yep.
And then it ended up going on, it got shut down after 5, so we never made it to 6.
Right.
But 6 would have been unbelievable. If we ever would have had some backing then to keep that show, to make 6 happen.
Yep.
God
what
knows.
Were you missing the Capitol?
Something happened with him with the money. He got cut off with money, something. He had plenty of money, and then all of a sudden, it got shut off somehow. And
I mean, when
probably a big story behind that.
When you're looking at it from Dana White, it was the Fertitta brothers. Did you say
Fertitta
brothers?
Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta.
Because that's the thing. If you're going to be able to do things like this, and he was going to give a huge purse to Kimbo Slice to get it started, you got to make sure you're making a ton of money and you can keep going and going.
If I ever had the Fertitta's brothers behind me,
with
that, we were getting so big so fast.
Right.
We were on pay-per-view. We had 7,000-8,000 people at the which it was unheard of at the time.
Right.
Anybody other than the UFC to do 7,000-8,000, 10,000 people plus pay-per-view.
That's a massive thing.
Was unheard of.
Oh, so you were getting 7,000 people in person.
We got like 7,000 or 8,000 people to show up for the Kimbo fight.
Right.
And that was big at that time.
And then on top of it, you were selling it on pay-per-view.
And then he had pay-per-views on in demand and something like that.
Right.
Yeah,
because pay-per-view was massive back then. I don't know what's going on with it now.
Yeah, it got big. It got big a little bit after that. It was when the UFC really took off like crazy.
That's when pay-per-view went insane.
Going on with pay-per-view now?
What's that?
Everyone's pissed off at spending money for 40 seconds.
Yeah,
no that's what's going on right now.
Did you guys watch that?
No.
I watched it the next day, and it wasn't even. It was like pay-per-view through ESPN Plus, and I have ESPN Plus, but then it was like another $85 to watch the fight.
And 40 seconds?
For 40 seconds,
that's expensive.
And I was like, you know what? I'll watch it online the next day, and the fight was so short that I could watch it on Twitter.
Yeah.
What was it? 44 seconds, right?
40 seconds, yeah.
40 seconds.
It's amazing. A guy like Donald, I mean, believe me, I love Donald Cerrone.
Yep.
He's a warrior. I mean, up until that fight, you would have had to take him out with a baseball bat. He'd die in the ring rather than lose.
Right.
And he gets taken out with shoulder strikes and rolls up in a ball on the ground and the whole thing stinks.
Yeah, you never seen anything like that, right?
Nah, that stinks.
Sometimes that was like old school boxing where like Mike Tyson would knock you out in the first round.
Yeah.
But that was different. Yeah, he hit him with the shoulder, right?
Shoulder
I saw it. I'm like,
strikes,
he shouldered him in the face? And then he just went down from there, and then they called it.
Yeah, I mean, Conor's got you could tell if you watch some of the interviews, he slipped a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, these guys that do interviews, they get the words out of you. He slipped a little bit here and there about what his future is.
Right.
And it's not MMA, it's boxing.
Is it really?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He's such a celebrity at this point. He's still a fighter, but he's like someone who's in the tabloids.
My God,
like TMZ's following the guy.
Yeah, they asked Conor, what are you going to do next? He goes, well, I'm waiting for Lorenzo to get back Tuesday. We're going to talk about what's next. Why would you be waiting for Lorenzo to get back? He's not even involved with the UFC anymore.
Right.
Because him and Dana bought they're doing boxing now.
Oh, they are?
So they're waiting. Yeah, he's going to end up fighting Manny Pacquiao.
You think that's what's going to happen next?
Absolutely.
And I've heard things rumbling that he might fight, what's his name again?
Mayweather
again. I don't know if that's true or not.
he's got I mean, what he should do is what he should have done. And what he can do is fight Paulie Malignaggi. That's the fight. Everybody, because they got the history, they sparred.
Right.
It's a pretty good rivalry. Manny Pacquiao, boy, I'll tell you what. I think he's got a better shot up against Mayweather than just Pacquiao.
Right.
As weird as that sounds. Style-wise.
Yeah, yep.
Pacquiao's relentless. I mean, he'll come out. Mayweather's going to, stay away until he stays away out of trouble till you're tired, and then he comes in and gets you out of there.
That's how we knocked him out the first time.
Yeah.
It was like, what, the 10th round or something?
Yeah, 10th round.
And he just withholds the storm.
Waited him out.
Yeah, he waits it out. He's very
Take him into the deep water, drown him. Oh, yeah.
So you think Pacquiao's getting old, though.
Yeah, but you know something? Pacquiao's a whole different style of fighter.
Right.
So it would be... it would be believe it or not, I think Pacquiao would be a better fight with McGregor.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Paulie Malignaggi would be too, because they're brawlers, they're fighters.
Right.
Mayweather's more of a boxer than a fighter.
And that's what the UFC started as, just brawlers, right?
Yeah.
That's even with Kimbo Slice. So what do you think? What's the future of the UFC?
Jesus, they're as big as they can be now.
You think this is like the next NFL, NHL, like it's going to rival those types? It kind of almost already is.
I think it's where it is.
Yep.
And I don't know how much bigger they can get, but it's surely now it's, now it's fights that they're, dream fights almost. Right. Like, it's not like ranking. They always mention the rankings. Rankings mean nothing. It's what everybody wants to see, what's going to sell the tickets in the pay-per-view, and those are the fights they're going to have, and that's it.
Right. That's what it comes down to, is they're trying to pair the people who are going to bring the biggest crowds.
Yeah.
So, it's basically essentially a mainstream sport at this point.
Yeah. If they were a circus, they'd promote more. They'd promote the two-headed cow more than they'd promote anything else.
Right.
That's what it always came down to. That's what it is.
Yeah, selling tickets, selling pay-per-view, and cashing the coin for Dana White, right?
Oh, God. All about the money.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, what do you think, Ed? Do you have anything to add?
I got nothing.
You got nothing? Gary, you have anything to add before we sign off?
No, hey, I'm glad I was able to talk about this for a bit.
I appreciate you coming on. It was a great show. Hey, guys, like, subscribe, follow, tell your family, your friends. We'll see you next week.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.